Welcome, boys and girls, to the very first episode of the Zenescope podcast, Everything Zen, where we discuss everything in the Zenescope universe, from Grimm Fairy Tales to Van Helsing, Robin Hood, Monster Planet, Belle the Beast Hunter, and so much more. This is Zenescope. I'm your host, Mark Sells, and we're excited to have you with us on our inaugural podcast for November 2020. Each month we'll be talking about all of the exciting events coming up on the Zenescope calendar, all of the new release comics, graphic novels, limited edition collectibles, art prints, games, and gear. Plus, we'll have lots of giveaways, roundtable discussions with the creators, artists, and writers who give our characters life, and special guest stars from comic book conventions all around the world. No doubt, many of you are familiar with the legend of Van Helsing, the famed doctor, vampire hunter, and mortal enemy of Count Dracula, created by Irish author Bram Stoker in the 1897 Gothic horror novel Dracula. Since then, Abraham Van Helsing has found his way into pop culture lore, from plays and novels to television and films where he's been portrayed by Peter Fonda, Christopher Plummer, and Hugh Jackman, just to name a few. And he made the transition into comics with Marvel's The Tomb of Dracula series from 1972 to 1979. And that's where our story begins, with the focus on Zenescope's Liesel Van Helsing, the daughter of Abraham, a brilliant inventor who spent years trapped in a hell dimension known as the Shadowlands, and has been brought to the present day to take on Dracula, Frankenstein, werewolves, mummies, and an army of undead. On this podcast, we'll be focusing on all aspects of Van Helsing, starting with Liesel's origin story as told by co-founder Ralph Tedesco and editor Pat Shand. And we'll also bring in editor Dave Franchini to learn more about her current storylines. We'll also be delving into the inspiration behind the art and imagery of Van Helsing with Anthony Spay in our Artist Spotlight. And later, we'll be sitting down with the cast and crew of the hit Syfy series Van Helsing, Jonathan Scarf and Neil LaBute. So stick around, it's going to be one terrific show.
Hey everybody, this is your prize MC, your master of giveaways, Chris Van Samson. And we want to kick off this inaugural podcast with something extra special, especially since November culminates with Thanksgiving. As a thanks to you, our loyal listeners and fans, we've got a few prize opportunities I'd like to share with you. The first is our podcast Word of the Month. Whenever you hear this sound during the podcast, we'll reveal a secret word or phrase. Just email us at info@zenescope.com with that word or phrase, and we'll send you a promo code to use on your next purchase on zenescope.com. It could be a discount, a free mini art print, a book, or a sticker. You never know. Only one submission per person. Secondly, in honor of Van Helsing this month, we're giving away one of the brand new Van Helsing Bishujo style statues from our current Kickstarter campaign to one lucky winner from all the podcast Word of the Month submissions. To be eligible, email us that word or phrase of the month, and you could be one of the first to own the brand new Van Helsing figure. And if that's not enough, we're also giving away 3 second-place prizes from those podcast submissions. It's super cool, with our favorite monster hunter giving you a smoldering look with fire in the background. You can check it out on Zenescope.com. Again, it's a full-size 11x17 art print of Van Helsing vs. Dracula number 4. So, listen carefully and email us at info@zenescope.com for your chance to win. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks, Chris. Also worth mentioning, the podcast contest runs all November long, so you can send us an email any day or time up until midnight on November 30th. The winners will be announced on Facebook the first week of December. Now, to get things started for our Van Helsing themed podcast, I'm pleased to bring in co-founder Ralph Tedesco and editors Pat Shand and Dave Franchini, as they get a little nostalgic talking about the origin and evolution of Liesel Van Helsing, from her first appearance in Grimm Fairy Tales Unleashed to her latest, Bloodlust, releasing on November 18th. With her trademark steampunk look, Liesel is a deadly force to be reckoned with, one of Zenescope's most iconic and all-time favorite characters. Take it away, Ralph.
Hey guys, I have Pat Shan here. Blast from the past, Pat Shan.
Why, hello.
Hello. We're talking Van Helsing this month, and since we're doing all things Van Helsing, I wanted to ask you about since you had a hand in the whole process of creating her and writing her. I guess my question for you is, what do you recall about us coming up with a character? How do you remember it?
The way that I remember it is I was at my day job at Starbucks making those lattes, right? And I got an email from Raven Gregory, and he pitched to me, you, and Joe all at once this company-wide crossover called Unleashed. And he wanted to do a main series and 5 spin-off series because, you know, he's Raven Gregory, right? And he had 1 prequel series and 4 series focusing on monsters. And when you guys greenlit it, our goal was to create a character for each of the monster series that could be a Zenescope icon, the same way that Sela was, that Robin Hood was becoming. And we started to come up with things. And I remember we pitched to you a few different ideas. And one of the notes that you came back with was pretty much a fully formed, let's do a female Van Helsing. And Raven and I took that note and chose to make it his daughter, so she would have that legacy element, that she can have these interesting flashbacks. And we wanted to do it where she was introduced in Unleashed but didn't have her own title in Unleashed, the same way that a Masumi or a Roman did in their titles. The Vampire's title focused on the villains, so we wanted to have later on a kind of like Van Helsing name title because we thought it was a really cool character that was going to have legs beyond Unleashed. And yeah, we introduced her in Unleashed #0, and that was the very start of Van Helsing. It has gone. It's had legs beyond Unleashed and has had many of its own titles, but Unleashed is the core of where it started.
I guess we always wanted to make her a descendant of Abraham Van Helsing.
Yeah.
And then that made sense to make her London born. And then we wanted to we did the time hop for the character where she comes from this Victorian era London to present day.
Yeah.
United States.
Yeah, because you had that tension of someone who is comfortable in the past in this kind of modern world. It's just it's a strange feeling, and it was one that with Sela, who you and Joe created, that was true of her too in some ways, but we had met her in Grimm I think 2 at a point when she had already been in the modern world for a long, long time. And she had grown through the years, whereas Van Helsing had been in the modern world, then in hell for a long, long time. And then all of a sudden just pops up here. And it's a totally foreign world to her.
Right.
And just, it's sort of like in the Thor movie, when Thor goes from the high and mighty world of Asgard and he's put in our world, there's a comedic element to it. You know, it's that character can't operate the same way that they did here, and we did that with Van Helsing too. But you know, it's crazy thinking back. I actually can't believe that Raven and I pitched that character as a dude to you first. It would seem like that, like she should, you know?
Yeah, it's weird that it's weird because I can't really envision that now.
Yeah.
That it was a guy, but you know, sometimes you just, you know, we've gender bent a lot of characters over the years. Yeah. So it just made sense. But yeah, the fish out of water story is always fun to tell.
Yeah. And
then having allowing us to do some of the levity and the comedic elements to that, and her kind of adapting to totally, not only a different country, but a different time period.
Exactly. Yeah. And in many ways it was it felt to me as a writer the opposite of what I was doing on Robin Hood. Because with Robin Hood, we took someone who was very much from our world and put her in that high fantasy world. And even though Van Helsing wasn't from a fantasy world, she was from a world different to ours. So it was kind of cool to have these two characters who were in many ways the opposite of each other, have this shared sort of fish out of water thing going on.
All right, Pat. Well, thanks for stopping by, man.
Anytime, dude. Yeah, I am excited to see you guys doing this. This is awesome.
Hey, guys, we have Dave Franchini with us. Dave is our executive editor of the last 4 to 5 years, Dave. Is that right?
Yeah. I had to count it on my fingers real quick, but that's about it. Yeah, it flew by. Yeah.
I'm very impressed that you can count up to 5 on your fingers. I've gotten to 3, and
that's the tricky one. The one at the 3.
The fourth one is always the ring finger is the one that really messes me up. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you real quick, bring you in because we wanted to ask you about Van Helsing and the new arc. I mean, her story arc, I guess I should say, and we've kind of turned a lot of our 2021 series are going to be more in the oversized one-shot realm. What do we have coming up for Van Helsing?
Yeah, I mean, yes. So we kind of build them into the standalone stories. So we have, after Van Helsing, the 2020 annual Bloodlust that comes out in November. Then we'll have Van Helsing 50 that comes out in December, which is actually a giant size story. Pretty much goes all over the universe, not just Oz, Neverland, Wonderland, and Grimm, but more into like the multiverse and kind of opens up more of this universe to our whole Grimm Fairy Tale line. But then starting in like January, we're going to be doing bi-monthly 32-page one-shot stories of Van Helsing. So like each one will focus on a villain that kind of like it builds off of that story. So the first one will be about Van Helsing versus the Hellfire Club, which it ties back into the Tales of Terror Hellfire one-shot. And then we'll also have in March, we'll have the Van Helsing versus Black Annis, who is this witch that basically the lore behind her is that she takes children and kills them and skins them, and Van Helsing basically has to stop them because she's not really into that. She's not a fan of.
Guys, we don't condone this, and neither does Van.
No, she's like whatever the human version of PETA is. Like we don't condone human violence.
Right. It's just probably like humanity.
I mean, just
basic humanity, laws of humanity. Any cool covers coming up that we should be looking out for?
All of them from A through C.
Oh.
No, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, we've been having a lot of great new artists, even some of our regular artists, but like we have the Igor Vitorino cover for the Hellfire one coming up. That's really awesome. It's the first time that Helsing and Karis are sharing a cover.
Oh, right.
And then there's a really good, like Josh Burns does an awesome cover on the B cover. It's just it's his first pinup of Karis. And it's really, really realistic and cool.
Great cover.
Yeah. And then we have Mike Chrome on the C cover. And it's just really like, kind of like it's a little bit different from his normal like the exclusive covers. He gets to go a little more detail. We get a little more city and gargoyles. It's got a really cool aesthetic to it. But I mean, yeah, there's some really cool things like covers coming up, and I can't wait till like people get to see them. Like that's the excitement for me is like every week where we get new covers in, and it's like little mini Christmases.
Mini Christmas is what we look for. Also, guys, we are on the cover of. Speaking of covers, we're on the cover of Diamond Previews this whole month. So if you go to your local comic shop, or if you pre-order with your your local comic shop, they use Diamond Previews to place their orders. We're in the catalog. We have the cover. Our Robin Hood cover is on the main previews cover.
Yeah, and it's for Robin Hood Iron Maiden Part 1, which introduces a new villain into the Robin Hood mythos. And then that's by Edgar Salazar and Ivan Nunez. It's a really cool cover too.
Cover. So check it out. Make sure you pre-order your Zenescope this month. Thanks for stopping by, Dave.
All right, thanks for booting me.
While we have a second, let's take a quick look at some of the exciting events coming up on the Zenescope calendar for November. New releases come out on Wednesdays all throughout the month, which includes the early release of Grimm Fairy Tales Holiday Pinup Special, a great stocking stuffer for any new or old Zenescope fan. On November 11th, the new tale of Belle, Horns of the Minotaur, makes its debut, and a week later, it's the Van Helsing annual Bloodlust, releasing on Wednesday, November 18th. November 20th will be our next movie night with Ralph, Chris, and the gang as they share personal insights and critiques of cult classics along with you. It's all live, unedited, and lots of fun. November's movie of choice is one of my favorite Kurt Russell films, Escape from New York. When Air Force One is hijacked and crashes into New York City, ex-soldier and federal prisoner Snake Plissken is given 24 hours to go in and rescue the president. It's a cult classic, and I certainly can't wait to hear what our panel has to say. Plus, make sure to check out Sun Kamanaki's Escape from New York homage, which will be available in different book forms, as well as showcase and art prints with a movie night subscription. Eric Basildua, aka Ebas, is our November featured artist of the month. So be on the lookout for discounts on his entire collection during the month. Plus, we'll have new Ebas prints, stickers, and metal cards. Thanksgiving is on the 26th, and that, of course, means November 27th is Black Friday, and the 30th is Cyber Monday. We've got a huge sale planned for you across all those days that includes big discounts, new products, and never-before-seen exclusives. It's going to be awesome, so get your shopping engines ready. And lastly, in the theme of Van Helsing, we've got 2 Van Helsing items that are inching toward release. The first is the Bishuju Style Edition statue of Liesel Van Helsing herself, the third in our Grimm Universe series. The Liesel figure is absolutely exquisite and is available in color and black and white versions. Just head over to Kickstarter and do a search for Zenescope Van Helsing, and you'll see all the terrific rewards and pledge levels. Then, if you head over to Zenescope.com/Van Helsing Online, you'll have the opportunity to join our online community in eager anticipation of the release of the 3D interactive Van Helsing experience. Just the other day, we got to see some of the early renderings and animations, and I have to say, it's truly mind-blowing. It's so cool. So check it out. It's on Zenescope.com/Van Helsing Online. Next up, we turn it back over to Ralph, who has a special guest in the studio for our Artist Spotlight.
Hey guys, we have Anthony Spay with us today. Anthony is an artist who was Zenescope's art director for a few years, and he's been doing artwork for us for probably over 10 years now. As a freelance artist, I think. Anthony, how many years were you our art director? Was it?
Yeah, like 4.5 years. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I started doing freelance in about 2009, I believe. So.
And Anthony's designed many a character for us, and he could probably rattle off some of the characters he's designed more so than I can. I mean, I know a few of the big ones, but which ones did you come up with as far as design for Zenescope?
Well, Van Helsing, obviously. A lot of the Wonderland characters, the White Queen, Queen of Hearts, and the current look of Robin Hood. So there's been a bunch of different ones. Yeah,
there's probably I know there's even more than that.
Oh, yeah.
We can do a whole other podcast on it. This is our Van Helsing month, and we are doing everything Van Helsing, from our statue on Kickstarter, as well as we're unveiling a new online Van Helsing game this month. That's really cool. And we wanted to talk a little bit about the design and how we kind of came up with this character. Do you remember what the art direction? Because honestly, I don't. I don't remember, because at that time I was editor-in-chief of Zenescope, so this was probably where I was, heavily involved in the concept, and then passing off to you like, hey, this is an idea, and then you taking that idea and kind of running with it. Do you remember what the direction was?
A little bit, yeah. I had gotten a direction for the story and what kind of time period and character they wanted to go for, and it was like a Victorian character was where it was set in the beginning of the story. So a lot with that comes a lot of steampunk kind of stuff, and I know when just looking up different ideas, a lot of people back then wore top hats, so that's where we got the idea for the top hat and the steampunk goggles and all the steampunk versions of vampire hunting weapons, like a stake shooting steampunk crossbow kind of thing. So we wanted to have all those kind of cool little gadgets for her.
Yeah, because we were. Yeah, and she's an inventor as well.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's right, too. Exactly.
And I think she comes up with a lot of her own weapons, and we wanted to load that up.
Oh, yeah, I remember there were scenes with her in her workshop and everything like that, yeah.
I think we did a bunch of color variants on it, too, at first.
Yeah, at first it was more of a purplish color, like the red parts of her costume, and some different things I think got mixed around with black or brown leather as well. So before we came to the final version. Right.
Now it's more of this like red, like rust red and maroon. Sometimes the color variants. Sometimes the color is it varies sometimes in these versions of it. Sometimes it's more red, and sometimes it's more of the maroon. Or
exactly.
Yeah. And even with the fishnets, sometimes she wears the fishnets. Sometimes maybe she's not in the mood for the fishnets. She's doing
different people put their spin on it.
Yeah. It's pretty cool, though. I imagine it's cool also to have, a design you created, having different artists sort of taking that.
Oh, it's one of my favorite things, to see different artists take on. I always enjoy seeing it. Every time I see a different Van Helsing cover or something pop up, I always check it out to see what they did with her, and it's really cool. It's something I'm pretty proud of. Anytime you design a character that has done well and seems to be a lasting character, like I have a little the 6 scale of her up in my office, so it's really cool.
Yeah. It's one of our best, most iconic characters, so something to be proud of. Thanks for stopping by, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
What are you working on right now that you want to tell everybody about?
I have a Zenescope cover coming out soon for a Bell story written by Dave Franchini, I believe, and I will be doing more in the future.
Sweet. Anthony Spay, everybody.
For those of you interested in following Anthony online and checking out his work, you can find him on Instagram @Anthony Spay and Facebook under artist.anthony.spay. That little jingle can only mean one thing. It's our word of the month. For November 2020, the word of the month is Bloodlust. For our next segment, we had the privilege of speaking to not one, but 2 of the major players in Syfy's hit series Van Helsing. Canadian-born actor Jonathan Scarfe, who plays former Marine Axel Miller, Van Helsing's counterpart, and whom you might recognize from other hit television series, Raising the Bar and Ties That Bind. We also have with us Neil LaBute, American playwright, director, screenwriter, actor, and creator of the Van Helsing series, whose incredible breadth of work includes In the Company of Men, The Shape of Things, The Wicker Man, Lakeview Terrace, and Netflix's The Island. We sat down with both of these terrific guys to talk about their involvement with Van Helsing and what's in store for the 5th and final season, which airs very soon, we're told, on Syfy. First, here's what Jonathan had to say. In Van Helsing, you portray Axel Miller, who is this Marine who's on a mission to stand by and protect Vanessa Van Helsing at all costs. And it's very different from a lot of the characters you played in the past, from ER to Raising the Bar, Ties That Bind. How did you get connected with Van Helsing, and what about Axel's character piqued your interest?
Well, I again, while I was doing Raising the Bar, which is that legal drama, and anyone that's ever acted on a legal drama knows that it can get awfully boring, at times, when you're sitting there at these endless courtroom scenes. And I got a bit frustrated with acting. My career wasn't in the place I was hoping it to be. I'd done a couple of pilots in a row that seemed like they were going to be slam dunks and they were really exciting projects, and then they didn't move forward. And in the midst of all of that, I bought myself a sailboat, not knowing anything about sailing, to live on in Los Angeles, because I was commuting back and forth between Vancouver and Los Angeles. Family was in Vancouver. I was going down there to work. And it just seemed like a fun, neat, wacky idea. Like, well, that'll be the apartment. I'll just buy this crazy old sailboat with the idea of like hopefully being able to sail it one day once I learn how. And so that started a process that wound up a year and a half later. But the wife and kids moved on to the boat. We rented our house out in Vancouver. We lived on the boat, Marina Del Rey, for a year and a half. Then finally, once we figured out enough of the systems and how to, get around the backside of Catalina and anchor and everything else, we kind of had a now or never moment where the kids were 10 and 8 years old. We were heading into another pilot season in Los Angeles, and it was like, well, if we do this, if we do another round of pilots, I was very much in line for those jobs at that particular moment. And if we get one and it goes, then that's what we're doing. That's our sort of life journey for the next few years. And if we get one and it doesn't go, we're going to have to sell the boat. So if we're ever going to go and have an adventure on this boat, this is the moment. This was like New Year's Eve, coming into 2012. And by Valentine's Day, we had stocked the boat, untied the lines, and sailed out the harbor of Marina Del Rey and hung a left. And then we spent 2.5 years off the grid entirely, never at a dock, never at a marina, always at anchor at some, deserted island in the middle of nowhere, trading with little fishing villages for food, harvesting our, most of our food out of the sea from what we could hunt and gather, teaching the kids about sustainable living, and, fixed the boat on the fly, and we ended up circumnavigating the entire Pacific Ocean over the course of 2.5 years. And
wow.
It was just after coming back from that experience that this role came along. And so, as you say, the Marine, and that's not something that I have any experience with at all, but the notion of being a protector and a provider and, having sailed with a wife and children all around the ocean, these sort of extreme experiences. And also when you're out there on your own in the middle of nowhere, there's a survivalist element to it where, everything that breaks down, everything's up to you. Whatever breaks on the boat, whatever's happening to you, whatever weather comes in, whatever injuries you get, you're completely on your own in terms of dealing with them all. So this sort of post-apocalyptic world of a guy who's a Marine, who's a protector, there was so much about that character that I felt like I could bring something to, having just had this crazy experience.
Right. That's really incredible. And obviously, when it comes to Van Helsing, you've got Bram Stoker's classic that kind of lays the foundation for the whole Van Helsing saga. Were you at all familiar with Zenescope's version of Van Helsing in preparation for the show? And what other materials and sources were critical for you to draw upon?
What's funny is that I was not aware of the fact that it was inspired by the Zenescope graphic novel until I think we were deep into season 2, and I walked into the writer's room because I was going to get to direct for the first time that year, and had to have some Q&A with the writers. I was led into the inner sanctum of the writer's room, and one of the Zenescope graphic novels was up on the wall. I was like, "What's that?" Because some buddy of mine, I think a couple of months before that, was a big comic book fan, was the idea that the show was based on a series of graphic novels, and I was like, no way, I would have known, I would have heard that already. And then it turned out he was absolutely right, and there it was on the wall. But no, so I had not been aware of that. I'd just been going strictly off the scripts that we were handed.
And once you started directing, were you able to, did you go back into any of Zenescope's source material, or did you go into any other Van Helsing related material to prepare?
I didn't, because the show had taken such a departure from any of what that source material might be.
Right.
And I think kind of intentionally so, that it seemed like going back to whether it was Bram Stoker's or whether it was we have such a crazy schedule on that show. It's, you know, we shoot it in much less time than any other sane show would try to shoot that kind of material. When you have that much action, those many fight sequences, that much, you know, special effects, makeup going on, all of these things are incredibly time consuming when you're shooting. You know, we managed to get these 2-episode blocks done in 13 days.
Wow.
You know, with basically whoever's the director of the block is, you know, has a riding crop in one hand and a bullhorn in the other. It's like the only way to get to the finish line is to be incredibly prepared and just show up knowing that you're going to be sprinting for the whole marathon.
I'm glad you mentioned that sprinting because, and quite literally, can you talk about the physical demands for the role? Specifically, what does vampire hunter training look like?
Well, you know, it's like any acting role. It's like all that prep goes. You know, if people get in shape for roles, people do all that kind of stuff. People train. You know, I did a role in Equalizer 2, which was, you know, because it had a big budget. They had huge amounts of training going on, you know, ahead of time. You know, there was great body, sales guys, and everything, you know, about how to clear, you know, warehouse spaces, how to breach doors, how to, you know, cover each other, how to laser rope targets, and, you know, that was fantastic. Van Helsing, again, it didn't have that kind of a budget, so basically they just said, you know, we want you to show up as fit as you can, but you're on your own doing it. So, you know, that was good. And it's a good thing to try and show up, not just for the aesthetic of being a fit guy, but for the nature of what the show is, the amount of fight sequences that go on through the course of the season, the amount of running, jumping, climbing trees, and, you know, yelling and screaming that goes on.
It's a lot.
And, yeah, you take a beating, too, over the course of it. And, yeah, there's a fantastic stunt coordinator on the show named Monty Ray Smith. I have a fantastic stunt double that's been there throughout all 5 seasons named Matt Belray, and they deserve all the credit for anything that looks like it would, you know, really hurt. And even just normal old, you know, fight sequences or fall on the ground, you know, you do it 25 times from, you know, 6 different angles, and when you realize that you're on the wrong side of 40, you're like, oh man, I am sore.
Absolutely. Things appeared to be pretty grim at the end of season 4 for our protagonist with the vampire apocalypse in full throttle. What can you tell us or maybe tease us about season 5 and your character's arc?
Well, I mean, you know, we got to have the rare experience of being a show that was knowing that they were going into their final season and getting to arc the story accordingly. So all roads do lead to a conclusion, which is, you know, is nice to be able to say. The final confrontation with the Dark One, with Dracula. And, you know, it's a very bumpy road to get there. The most exciting part of the season to me is I got the opportunity to direct the first block of episodes, which is a 3-episode block to open up the season. And it's, I'm not sure what can I say about that. It's not...
I don't want the snipers to come after you if you can't share anything. That's totally fine.
Those first 3 episodes, we were able to go to Eastern Europe and shoot in Eastern Europe for those 3 episodes, and to try and give a window into what our sort of the origins of our mythology a little bit.
Nice. With it being the final season, were you fully satisfied with how things wrapped up?
Yeah, I was really happy with what the writers came up with. I thought they did a great job because, you know, I mean, you know, some shows, I think most shows evolve as they go. Occasionally you have one that, you know, I think the rumor, you know, there were the mythologizing that went on around Breaking Bad was that Vince Gilligan had that masterminded from the very beginning. He knew where he wanted to wind up from the beginning. And that show always felt like that because it always had this incredible cohesion to it from one season to the next to the next. And Van Helsing was a show that was a perpetually evolving thing. So from, you know, we get this surprise phone call saying, hey, look, you're going to get to go and do another season. They'll be like, all right, well, boy, what are we going to do? And they have to get to it and start take it in a slightly new direction, opening up different story possibilities that hadn't necessarily been there before. So with all of that, cobbling together a variety of ideas to be able to come to a sort of a final conclusion and have it feel like there was this, to have it feel as though it were masterminded from the beginning. I thought they did a great job of that.
And now, Neil LaBute. I'm
curious what your favorite part of writing is, because like for me as a graphic novel writer and coming up sort of as a screenwriter before I started writing graphic novels, and I'm not close to being on the level you've been on for your career, but as far as like what goes for me, it's like that draft. I love working on the drafts after the vomit draft. Like once you get through that vomit draft of like, oh my God, to me that's like the real tough part. And then being
I may have been isolated for a while because I've never heard vomit drafts before, so I'm going to credit it to you. It's a good one.
No credit to me because I've heard that from other writers. And then, but yeah, the vomit, I'll steal it from you and credit it. You can steal it from me. You can credit me if you like, but
yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, I like that draft as well. I guess so. What does that say about me? I like vomit, I guess.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
I'm not going to examine that too closely, but I like, I seem to like all aspects of it. I certainly like, I guess whatever you're talking about after that first draft, vomit or otherwise,
right?
It's rewriting. I love rewriting and continuing to carve away at this thing. It's a little like sculpting. You see this thing underneath it that you keep chipping away at. And sometimes it's the reverse. I guess you're adding material back or going in a different direction. I've met a lot of people who really just despise the idea of rewriting. They think magically it comes out perfectly the first time and don't want to touch it.
I need to meet these people.
God bless them. Yeah, I'm not one of them. So but I like that part of the craft, of getting in there and getting your hands dirty and keep working on it. I mean, I've gone back to plays. I mean, it's different with films, of course. If you get lucky enough to actually put it on film or tape or whatever it is, is tape done? I don't know. Whatever it is, at that point it becomes kind of locked in, and someone might remake it years later, but it is then its own thing. But certainly on stage, I've gone back now in a career that has lasted long enough to say that I've gone back several times to various things. I try and treat it like something new. And so I've gone back to things that have been published and continued working on them. So sure. I do like rolling up my sleeves and getting my hands dirty and doing the work. So I definitely like that part. I guess I like the kind of isolation of writing, the fruition of it, of seeing, something a blank page that becomes filled with something, and you can arrange those words any way you want, and I guess it's like a huge Scrabble game. Eventually, you keep throwing stuff up there, and eventually there's words, and they start to mean something, and so there's a pleasure to that. And I've in these last 7 months that we've been in some kind of isolation or locked down a little bit, and all those things that have come with this crazy wave of disease, I've certainly got a taste of that again, of going back to my roots. I think I'm sure we're going to get a huge surplus of material that people have written. Some people have felt like, gosh, I can't write during this time, but it's not that I've rediscovered it, but I've certainly refelt that just pure pleasure of, I'm writing this, I don't know what audience it's for. Will it ever see an audience? Will it, come to the stage? Will it go to being made into a film? That's secondary to the fact that, boy, I just enjoyed sitting there and working on it. So that's some small light in my personal darkness of, this has been, an ordeal, and it's been an ordeal for everybody. But there is that pleasure that I wasn't writing this for a commission. I didn't get paid for that. There have been those things in this time that I've written that are strictly just for my own pleasure of writing.
Fantasy horror seems like a departure from a lot of your previous works as a playwright and a director. And I was curious what attracted you to Van Helsing and how the project came to light.
Well, a couple of my earlier things, like In the Company of Men, got called horror films, back in the day. So I guess there's always been some kind of interest in psychological terror and horror and the way that power games that people, certainly, I mean, what is Friday the 13th, if not, a power game where, there's a guy with a mask and a machete, but it's still power, I guess. So I've always, my mom loved a good scary movie, and I accompanied her to a lot of those things. But I've always loved classic stuff like that, and Dracula was right there at the top of the list. I did an adaptation of Dracula for the stage years ago, and interestingly, the Van Helsing I wrote in that adaptation was a female, and a very androgynous Dracula, that's something else that we've now as you may have seen in the 4th season of Van Helsing, we tapped into as well. We have a woman playing Dracula, and it's been a real treat to see that. That was, I felt like, honestly, something that we hadn't seen before. So that was a lot of fun. I worked with some producers from Canada who were producing the series Hell on Wheels, and
was it Chad and Chad Oakes, right?
Yeah, Chad Oakes and Mike. We got friendly working on that series, and there was some point out there in the middle of the prairie in Calgary that they were like, "Hey, have you ever thought about how do you feel about vampires and that sort of thing?" And they let me know that this material had come into their hands, that there was an interest in, not really at the time taking the Van Helsing, the idea certainly was, here you've got a female Van Helsing through your world, your comic world. But we obviously, if you know that world, we haven't followed that very closely. It was, the idea was, let's take a female Van Helsing, and then they had the other really good idea I thought they had was the notion that she could turn vampires back into.
They bite her. Right?
Yeah, I thought that was she could bite someone, or if they bite her, they could be brought back to being human. So that notion I thought was again something I hadn't seen, was clever, and so with my predisposition for that world, I thought, yeah, that's something that would be interesting to get into and work with. Definitely a genre that I'm not known for, and just again pushing the boundaries of what you're doing every day as a writer or a director or a producer. And so I said, yeah, let's do that. I'll jump in and work on this with you. And so we recruited a bunch of really good writers out of Canada. Somebody who'd worked, had done a lot of creating, Simon Barry, who's just done Warrior Nun. He was there at the inception of this. And so, we just kind of all created this world that felt interesting to us. And here we are 5 years later, still chugging away. I mean, this will be the final season. Everything will kind of come to at least a kind of ending. The beauty of knowing when you're doing your last season is you don't have to have that sort of cliffhanger that says we could go on, but this could also be an ending. You're able to say, yes, this is how we see this chapter at least coming to a close. So that's kind of how I got involved.
Yeah, it's interesting because I do remember when we first pitched this to Syfy, in the room they were literally like, "Oh, we love a female Van Helsing idea," and then it was like, could you make this post-apocalyptic, and can we do, and I remember in that I think it was one of the very first discussions we had was the reverse, reversing the vampire, if they bite, if she bites her, they'll turn back from vampire to human. And that was like something that was very important to them. And I remember thinking, they right away, it was sort of like, oh, this isn't going to be anything like our comic. but at the same time, we were like, you know what, like, and when we found out you were involved, and it kind of took that weight off our shoulders of going like, oh, okay, we was that reaction of like, oh, we have somebody like we know can do this, and it was like kind of like, okay,
well, thanks for that.
Not as scary.
I think in some ways that's very freeing, both on our, on all sides, that the material that people love that you guys have done remains its own thing, and you've inspired this thing, and it's its own thing, and so you can kind of enjoy them both and not be just looking at it going, oh, they didn't do that. Oh, they didn't quite get the goggle lenses exactly right on her hat. And, those things, you could spend more time just going, hey, this idea, really has some elasticity to it. We can create our world. They can create their world. I remember on the, everybody today has a lookbook and all kinds of like a slide presentation for shit when they come, to sell something to television or film. I remember they put a few images together for this when they showed it to me, and they had this woman, with her back to us walking in the wasteland with a sword in her hand and ripped clothing and fire in the distance. And their tagline was, resurrection is a bitch. And right. I was like, no, I like that. We should definitely use that. I don't know if they ever have used that for the show itself, but I was always like, well, top that one, guys, because that's a great one.
I remember that as a teaser. I think it was Dan, if I'm not mistaken, Dan March. I don't know how well you know him, but I remember that came up in an early meeting. The resurrection is a bitch.
And we really embraced that. We were like, she really should be. She's been asleep. She's not happy. She doesn't know what the hell's going on. And we tried to make Vanessa not unlikable, but very, how you would feel waking up and life has changed and your daughter's missing and, you're cranky. She was, she doesn't really, she wasn't like the easiest person to embrace as a protagonist. But I love that about her. And then the life that Kelly Overton breathed into that character, you can't, the value of actors, you can't give too much credit to them. Right. Not only the way they have to work, as I mentioned earlier, but just, that taking off what's on the page and making it human, they just become that face of that. And having people like Jonathan Scarf and Chris Heyerdahl, people breathe life into these characters and make them so terrific and fun to watch. And I mean, this character of Sam, wherever he came from, the idea of us, we're locked in a hospital trying to keep the vampires out, and we've got a serial killer in here with us. That was a great little spark. I don't remember who came up with that. I'll take credit because nobody else is here. But that, the notion like that and where Chris Heyerdahl went with that character who seemed like this, deaf guy, seemed like the nicest guy in the world. And then slowly, the journey that character took was a blast to watch. And mostly it was just being around set going, what is Chris going to do today? What, wild place will he drag this character to? It's a blast to see people do that.
I don't know about you, but I can't wait for the 5th and final season of Van Helsing. Will Vanessa come back to save the day? Will Dracula complete the vampire apocalypse? And what's up with that strange orange powder we saw at the end of season 4? Stay tuned. You can binge or rewatch seasons 1 through 4 of Van Helsing right now on Netflix and get all the behind-the-scenes clips and commentaries on syfy.com/Van Helsing. That's Van Helsing. And now it's time for a little story from our co-founder, Ralph Tedesco.
Hey guys, it's Ralph here, and it's time for Ralph's Words of Wisdom, a segment where I give you my wisdom through a story, through an anecdote. Words of advice for the audience here. Since this is November, Thanksgiving's coming up, and the first thing I thought of is turkey, and I'm going to tell you how I got there. The turkey made me think of it kind of triggered this memory I had of when I was maybe like 3 or 4 years old. So one of my earlier memories in life, and I probably tucked this one away for most of it. When I was a little tyke, as they say, we obviously, if you know me, I'm from Philly. I'm from the suburbs of Philly. Now, my grandparents, they are South Philly through and through. We would visit them all the time down in South Philly, and we would all go to the shore, the Jersey Shore, as they called it, Ocean City. And now, why are we talking about the Jersey Shore and Thanksgiving together? Because those things don't normally go together, and they don't. The reason I'm bringing it up is back, some years ago, we had turkey at my grandmother's house for some reason. She made a turkey in the middle of the summer. So this wasn't Thanksgiving. She made this turkey. I think it was left over from Thanksgiving. It had been in her freezer. I guess she decided since we were staying with her, she would just get rid of this thing. And, who wants to eat a turkey? I don't know. I'm 4. What do I know? I don't know what I like to eat then. Probably not turkey. But she made the turkey. She has a leftover turkey carcass. We were going to the shore, going to the beach. My grandmother, God rest her soul, she was this Spitfire, South Philly, Italian lady who took no crap from anyone. It was funny as hell. And she was a little nuts, let's be honest. So she decides since we're going to the beach, we're going to have lunch, we're going to have something to eat. She's trying to get rid of this turkey. Like, that's all she wants to do is get rid of the turkey. She doesn't want it to go to waste. So she wraps it up in tinfoil, okay? Brings this turkey carcass to the beach and decides, hey, like, when you guys get hungry, take out some turkey. I don't know what's going on. Again, who am I to question this? I'm 4. Lunchtime comes, she unwraps the turkey from the tinfoil, and before we can even blink, seagulls start coming at us from every angle, man. Seagulls everywhere. Seagulls, boom, boom, boom. They swarm, they grab the turkey carcass from my grandmother. They rip it from my grandmother's hands. She's screaming and yelling at them. She's cursing at the seagulls. She's laughing too. Because I think at this moment she realizes the ridiculousness of the situation because she was a pretty self-aware person. But the idea of this turkey being taken by all these seagulls and attacked and ripped from us, and then of course the turkey falls to the sand a couple times. Gets nice and covered up in the sand. Seagulls don't seem to mind. They keep going at it. They eat the turkey, almost as if to say, look at us, idiots, idiot humans, and then eventually take off with the rest of the turkey carcass. That's my earliest memory of turkey. I was never a huge turkey fan. But the moral of the story is this: don't bring a turkey to the beach because you might get attacked by a flock of seagulls. And that could be bad. However, if it's the banned flock of seagulls, maybe it's a little bit better. If the band of flock of seagulls attacks your turkey, that could be more interesting. But if it's a real, actual flock of seagulls, you probably won't enjoy that situation. Band flock of seagulls, good. Real flock of seagulls, bad.
I mean, who doesn't love flock of seagulls, right? Thank you, Ralph, for sharing that great story. This podcast has been so much fun, we might have to do it all over again next month. Thank you to Ralph, Pat, Dave, Chris, and all our special guests, Anthony Spay, Jonathan Scarf, and Neil LaBute. I'm your host, Mark Sells. Thank you for listening, and wishing each of you a very Zen-tastic Thanksgiving. We'll see you again next month, right here on Everything Zen.